o'clock. I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. The chair notes there's a quorum present, and we'll do the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Obviously, that's done its job.
So 2.0 is additions and revisions to the agenda. I sent you guys an email about adding two things. One would be under consent agenda 4.7, consider approval of amendment number 2 to the IGA for temporary juvenile director services with Wheeler County. They are still having a hard time getting their juvenile director recruited. So they had a promising person that then unfortunately had to decline. And so Amy is
Still
doing more hands-on
So we're increasing it from, was it April until?
August.
till August 1. And then the second piece of that would be 4.8, which would be consider extension of the temporary reclassification to juvenile director of juvenile director position to by county juvenile director through August 1, just to make sure we're compensating Amy for the extra time she's putting in. So if there's no objections, I'd like to add both of those to consent agenda.
No objection.
Any other additions or revisions? Okay, let's move on to correspondence and public comment. Individuals wishing to address the county court may do so at this time and at other times throughout the meeting. Speakers are asked to raise your hand to be recognized by the chair. Give your name and address and limit comments to 3 minutes. Folks who are calling in via the Zoom platform, if you dialed your phone, it's *6 to unmute or lower left-hand corner if you are on your phone or iPad. And then I always remind folks that we are very informal if you are new here. So as we move through the agenda, if there's something that you have a question about or want to provide input, we welcome that. Any public comment at this point? Not seeing any. Okay, under correspondence, just wanted to note that we had received the final grant report from the city of Condon for their capital investment project at the baseball field for the housing development they're working on up there. So any folks who are interested in seeing how your money, your public money was spent, those are all on the website under the county court's packet information. So it's part of our commitment to being transparent with these grants. So anybody who's curious, that's where you will find it. I think that's all I've got for correspondence. So let's move on to the consent agenda.
Questions on the consent agenda, Commissioner Shannon?
I do not have any.
I did not either. I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda, which consists of consider approval of April 20th, 2022 regular meeting minutes, consider approval of April 20th, 2022 executive session meeting minutes, consider approval of May bills pending review, consider approval of commercial building lease for Victims Assistance Department with Port of Arlington, consider approval of commercial building lease for County Court with Port of Arlington, consider approval of updated position descriptions for Assistant Roadmaster and Crusher Equipment Operator, consider approval of amendment number 2 to IGA for temporary juvenile director services with Wheeler County, and consider extension of temporary reclassification of juvenile director position to by-county juvenile director position through August 1, 2022. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, let's move on to 5.1 Gilliam County Public Health Transition Update. Daleen is here as well. We don't have anything really for you to be approving. Mostly we are just going through the long list of all of the things that OHA is looking to make sure we have in place for each of the program elements. So all of the policies, all of the requirements from our state and in some cases federal funders, just trying to put all of those in place. So Delaney and I are going to be tackling policy on this side. So you can expect probably in June to have some several page long agendas while we're going through all of those.
A lot.
I think there's probably maybe 24 policies that between the two that we need to have in place.
At least,
Yeah.
20 to 30, somewhere in there. On
Yeah.
the county part, and then,
Yeah, so
That sounds like fun.
yes, but should be all pretty straightforward stuff. It's just Delaney and I getting everything dialed in. Crook County, I think we mentioned before that OHA has a consultant that they hired to be a resource to us through this transition. She is the former Crook County Public Health Director, and so she took with her all of her Crook County policies. So we're not starting from scratch, at least. We can kind of have a sense of where to go, because there are a lot of them. And a new uncharted territory for the county, like HIPAA stuff and things that are much more complicated that we have never had to deal with since we haven't had health documents ever under our control. So we also got, we are starting to work on the subcontractor draft with South Gilliam Health District. That is at the attorney's desk right now. And I'm hoping we'll have a draft probably ready by early June is what I told her I was aiming for. And then Umatilla County, their legal counsel took a stab at the draft for the environmental health subcontract. They got it back to us yesterday, and that's at legal counsel as well. So I'm hoping the two of those we'll see aiming for like the June 1st meeting. The other two contracts that are outstanding are on the state's end. So I am expecting we will probably not see those until the last meeting in June, realistically.
Last minute.
Exactly. So that's the big one that overarches. And then the environmental health, the on-site septic is actually a three-way IGA between the state, Umatilla County, and us. And the state is taking the first cut of the draft. So we're waiting for the DOJ attorneys to turn that around. That's everything from the county side. Is there anything else that you want to flag for the commissioners that we're working on?
the big things that we're working on right now is we just late last week got like work plans, budgets, and kind of a timeline on what when they're wanting those from us, because it's going to be different than the other counties. And then they also gave us a timeline of when they plan to do the initial reviews and then the triennial reviews. So just trying to get all that in place. And then we did solidify a dietitian for WIC. So that feels like a big win. And it's through a company in Bend, and Umatilla Morrow Head Start kind of gave me that lead. Synergy is the name of the company, and they have a crew of dietitians that are all WIC certified and have worked with several other counties and currently work with several other counties to provide those services for them too. So it should go over pretty easily.
It's great.
Yeah.
That was going to be one of the tricky things to find. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys found that.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Well, there was one other thing that came to mind that I thought I was going to raise related to this, and it slipped my mind while you were talking, Daleen. What was it? I wanted to give, two things. I emailed you guys about this, but I just wanted to put on the record, since we talked about it in county court. There was a question about the alcohol and drug prevention dollars and the support for the school counseling program. And so Kimberly and I went back and forth a few times, but the simple solution, which you guys already know because we went through the budget process, is that Community Counseling Solutions coming into this fiscal year, or this next one, 22-23, was planning on eliminating their request from our general fund. Usually we've been giving them about $80,000 a year, so they were going to not need that. So Kimberly just asked if we could retain enough to cover the counselors, that portion of it. And so I thought that seemed like a reasonable, overall, we're decreasing the budget for overall
What
services,
is
but
the cost?
it's about 38,000. And I think we just put a placeholder of 40 in the budget in case there's anything that, I don't know if they're planning on giving their folks a bump with COLA stuff at the fiscal year or anything like that. So I put in a little bit more than that, but that way we're not, the general fund ask has shrunk still. So there's a savings to the taxpayers without jeopardizing what they're doing at the schools. And then that also allows the district to receive the full amount from the state and then to partner with the sheriff's office, juvenile department, and all the other partners that they're working on for their prevention work plan. So that was the solution. I just wanted to put that on the record that it's been found, the counselors will remain in the schools full time. And I still have not heard anything from North Central Public Health regarding how much money we will be getting from COVID. So I am holding the check, the last checks to them. I wanted to put on the record for you guys, not because we're not good partners, but because I think communication, it is easier for us to hold money than for us to ask for it back. So for now, I am just holding until I have better indication from OHA and North Central about.
Anything from OHA about it?
Not since my strongly worded email to them saying that in essence, this was ridiculous and that they are the funder of North Central Public Health and that they have asked us to jump through any number of hoops to make this transition work, and asking for some numbers from North Central Public Health did not seem like a heavy lift for considering that they are requiring us to provide the services. So there's also a thing of like, we need to be able to know somewhat to be able to budget how much money is going to run through there and even have placeholders. And the state is made very clear to me and Holly and Daleen that they expect us to respond to COVID-19, obviously, or as public health department, but have no idea if there'll be any funding or what that would look like or any strings that would be attached to it. I mean, nothing. So yeah, they haven't, they responded to my immediate email very quickly, but they have not responded since, which has been about 2 weeks now, I think, since.
I wouldn't hesitate to follow up with Andrew.
Yeah.
A
So,
little bit.
so that's the update, I think, on public health.
The pressure's gonna have to eventually come from OHA. Regardless.
Yeah.
I feel like that's with any information that we've asked for. The only way that we're getting it is through OHA, not necessarily through North Central, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
I don't think so.
We'll be having contracts and policies coming your way.
Oh, boy.
It's going to be exciting, riveting reading. All right, let's move on then. Let's go on to 6.1, which is consider proposal from Pillar Consulting for Fairgrounds Event Center project management. So we have some very exciting news, which is that we learned about a month and a half or so ago that in this last short session at the legislature, that our representative, Greg Smith, was given quite a bit of money to spread around the district and decided to give each of the fair boards within the district $1 million for a capital project of some sort. And then in addition, there is funding coming through Business Oregon for that is specifically designated for capital improvements at county fairgrounds. So the Fair Board is in the process of submitting a grant application for that second pot of money. The $1 million is guaranteed. This would be in addition to the $1 million.
And how much is that?
Gary, do you remember off the top of your head?
If all 36 counties applied for out of this pot of money, every one of them would get 277,000.
I was thinking 270.
So if 30 apply, then that's divvied up between those 30.
It's an even distribution by county, basically.
Yep. In Sherman County, I was talking to Bryce yesterday, they didn't even know about it. So
Oh,
I think
really?
there's gonna be some that probably don't apply because they're not aware of it.
The other thing that, from my understanding of talking with Nori and Leah Watkins, is doing kind of the application, is that the state on the Business Oregon grant is also requiring the counties to put them, to front the money and then have it reimbursable. So some of our counties that
I need to go.
can't do that are probably not going to be able to go after those funds. So there's a good possibility that we'll see a larger amount than the 277. Because, I mean, I just can't see.
Well, and I wasn't aware that this was going on. That I knew we were getting a bunch of money. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about the fair board's getting money, but I had no idea that we're considering an event center at ours. So, and you know, my first concern is that, you know, you look at the Grumpus building, paid $1.8 million for, what are you gonna build for $1 million? And what is it they're really after? I'm just curious about the background to get here.
Yeah, I mean, I think well, obviously and Gary can speak to like the board's thought process on projects and kind of what they've been talking about. What's before you today really is to give them the Fair Board access to Jeff to be able to explore the event center in more detail. So to be able to even apply for it, so that they know like how much they should be asking for, all that kind of stuff. But I don't, Gary, do you want to speak to like some of the projects you guys have been?
Yeah, I wish Chris was here because, you know, she's got it organized, but,
Yeah, I'm just kind of out there, so.
so where the old house used to be, we've always talked about putting something there and nothing extravagant, but we need, newer upgraded bathrooms in that area and a kitchen that the 4-H clubs can use, the cooking clubs. We don't want a commercial kitchen, but, you know, some, you know, good sink and stoves and different things where they can do their club events there and food prep and those kinds of things. But also then a center where, it's just a building, basically. with
It's
a
not
good
like a
kitchen and
huge
No,
event.
no,
complex.
we
You're
don't think
thinking
there's
of the
enough.
stage and.
Yeah,
Call for that, but we would like something that we can open up, like the building they have down in Cottonwood. You can open those doors up and have kind of an outdoor, indoor kind of an event. Or, you know, in the fall or spring or something, you can close it off and have a heated room.
So it would like replace the kitchen that's in the first hall.
Yeah, but we want to keep that space because it's really a good meeting space.
but like get rid of
But the bathrooms.
the
kitchen
bathroom and the
area,
kitchen area.
Figure out something to do there. I'm pushing for more like a pole building or something rather than a stick-built, engineered type thing that's gonna use up $1 million.
Really
I
cool.
personally don't want to do that.
Mhm.
And I think that our engineer is not really wanting to do that, but I think we just need to get our idea of exactly what we want. The other thing that we want to do is move the extension service up there. So there's somebody there all the time. And with our new extension agent, we have a lot more uses going on up there, a lot more events. It'd just be nice to have them there on the property,
Yeah.
just for those events. And so we're just kind of kicking around an idea of like a mobile office type. unit.
Yeah, what about getting rid of the mobile home office up there?
To me, that's a waste. It's a good space that was donated to us and it's no cost to us right now. And anything we replace it with is gonna be costly, so especially with the economy the way it is. So I would like to just take that space, do some work on it, make it a little nicer, a little more friendlier. And then the extension office, what I'd like to do is just put one of those mobile offices in there and then have that connecting porch. So they can come register 4-H or register open class. Those are just ideas. Nothing's been decided on, so.
And Jeff will have to come back with the bigger proposal. This is really just to give them some hours to sort of conceptualize what could fit on that space. you know, if it, because we really are talking about the grassy area in between the fence and the 4-H hall.
So the
basically.
18,000 in this is to develop the plan.
The 18,000 is gonna be based on time and materials, so it'll be initially whatever they need to complete their grant application. So depending on how detailed the state wants, you know, if they want detailed cost estimates, that would give Jeff the leeway to actually do that for them. But then beyond that, to kind of start to work up some different concepts for how the building would look. Because I think they also had, you have a donated grain silo that I think they wanted to try to work into that. So I mean, I think it would be a pretty cool space, and definitely people use the fairgrounds for all kinds of events, funerals, weddings, and all kinds of stuff. So I think it would be put to good use, but I see your point, Pat, about making sure that's right-sized for what you're actually trying to, you know, what you need to do. But I think we'll be constrained anyway, just because the grassy area is not that big.
Yeah.
Like the building can't.
And there's a little bit of room to expand beyond that grassy area, but I don't know that we would need to. I don't know. There's 5 of us on that board and we don't always agree, but usually in the end, we're all in
Imagine.
agreement. And things progress well. The other thing to think about is we can't get people up there to do food. You know, we put it out this year to nonprofits.
Oh,
um,
concession.
Would have first priority, but we didn't get any proposals.
Well, I think that you're suffering for that reason, some post-COVID stuff that's.
Sure.
I mean, for me to even consider, I ain't not gonna have employees that I could staff it with to do
Right.
something, and everybody's gotta be in the same situation. It's just a tough deal right now.
Well, kind of what I'm alluding to is the food booths are there,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, and if we got vendors coming in with their own trailers and different things, it's like, all right, now what do we do with these spaces, and can we do something different with those that would benefit the fair or the community? And so those are things to look at as well.
Mhm.
You know, and
Lots
So
of
when
projects.
you do like an $18,000 proposal like this, you don't have to have more than one quote.
No, the way our procurement policy works for these types of things is we are able to have, we are able to contract with, I think they term it professional services in the policy, but the engineers, et cetera, we can go up to, I think we would only have to contract if it's more than like $150,000 is the contract. And typically the way we've treated it is because Jeff has such a history with all the buildings that,
Yeah.
and is local,
Right.
you know, that we've treated that as we've tended to run those procurements through that. I mean, we definitely always have the option of going out and looking for quotes if we think that that Jeff's being unrealistic, but generally we've found that it's been, and frankly, when we're doing a construction project, it's really nice to have somebody who's local who can just run up and see what the contractors are up to. And I know, like when we replaced the roof and it leaked the first time, it was really nice to call Jeff and say, could you come up and look at the leak? And he was here within 15 minutes and had the contractor on the phone like 15 minutes later. So
And there's 2 other things that are, you know, we've been looking at and trying to figure out how we're gonna cover the cost is the roof replacement of the horse barn and the sheep barn. They tend over the shingles, the cedar roofing, and all of the fasteners are coming loose on there, and someday that's gonna blow off. Unless we can refasten it, which has been already done once, several years ago. And the other thing is the water line to the lower end, to the exhibit halls, food booths, office, is gonna need replaced at some point. Everything on the barn end is all been replaced already. So there's some long-term things that we need to figure out how,
That you might be able to umbrella. in.
depending on how much money we get and what's left over and That's kind of why I want to go with the cheaper side of a building, metal building or a pole building or something.
Yeah, and then
Less expensive.
Yeah.
Not cheap. Less
Well,
expensive.
less expensive. Well, and I think too, on the second grant that they're applying for, if there's not that many counties in there and they get a much bigger amount than what sort of the minimum that we've been kind of thinking in the back of our head, then that $1 million really has no strings attached to it in terms of what projects that it can be used for at the fairgrounds. So the fair board would then be able to kind of have their priority list that they could start tackling. So just something to keep in mind, but the intention would be that we would approve this to allow the fair board to have access to Jeff and have that all sort of tidied up so they can do their due diligence and thinking through how a building might look. Jeff would need to come back though. Obviously, this is a bigger project and the procurement needs to come under us as the contracting board for the county. So he'll have to come back. And I think we can invite the fair board back then to also talk more in depth about what the designs are looking like and which direction they're thinking that they would recommend that the county go in. So this is just kind of the preliminary, doing our due diligence to get something in place so we
we've
can.
only had one meeting, so we need to talk about it.
Yeah.
And then I missed the regular fair board meeting last month. I may not be.
Well, that just event center.
Yeah, that term makes it sound like this gigantic,
And the one thing
facility.
everybody always forgets is the maintenance that, and maintenance and insurance on that.
right?
building for the next 100 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd be a huge deal throwing that kind of money up there and making some improvements.
Yeah. be really nice.
Well, we've always tried to figure out ways to get people up there, you know, to do events and different things up there. And you know, with the addition of all of these 4-H projects that are actually happening out there now that weren't, you know, a few years back, it's kind of looks good.
yeah, and one of the things too, I just want to put on the record is, I think the other piece that's important in terms of the county support is, I think it'll be helpful for the fair board's application to have us, even though we haven't necessarily signed off on here's what the building should look like, all that kind of stuff. The idea that we are supportive of them going after the money, I think will help strengthen their application with the state. Because they're going to be, as I mentioned, looking for assurances that the county's willing to front the money and all that kind of stuff in order to do the reimbursable. So I think they're going to be looking for that from the applicants. So that's another reason why I thought it was important to kind of get this on our calendar and talking about it. So
And one other thing, if our plan works, the extension service is on board. But, you know, I don't know how much money the county gives the extension service now for their rent and occupation of the ESD building.
yeah, so some of that could be, and I think some of the communication with Mary Lee is she might have access to some dollars on her end. If we're doing, if they end up moving office space up there, they may be able to leverage some dollars that we wouldn't necessarily have access to, but that she might have access to through OSU. So that's the other component that I think, but these are all like bigger questions. I think the first thing is to understand like how much money we have to work with from the state. And then that will kind of dictate, I think, for the board and for us, what project and what the scope looks like and all that kind of stuff. So.
Okay.
Are we on board?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the professional services agreement with Pillar Construction Consulting Group in the amount of up to $18,500 for design and project management services for the Fairgrounds Event Center project.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the professional services agreement with Pillar Consulting Group in the amount of up to $18,500 for design and project management services for the Fairgrounds Event Center project. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I see Leah's on here. So Leah, we'll get that agreement with Jeff signed, and then feel free to use him as you need to fill out your state grant application with Business Oregon. All right, let's move on to 6.2. Consider approval of resolution number R 2022-07, dissolving the Fiber Council. Okay, so back in 2008 or 19, Gilliam County and the city of Condon created the Fiber Council, which was a 190 organization. And the thought at the time was that we had this dark fiber that both entities had invested quite a bit of money in, and that maybe we needed a joint organization to manage it. What we have found since the council really hasn't met, that we've been able to just partner as county and city without needing sort of a middle ground. And so earlier this year, Catherine got in touch and said that her counselors might be interested in just dissolving the council. Since that's one more entity we have to file things with Secretary of State, one more thing we have to do administrative stuff with, and it just didn't seem like it was serving the initial or the anticipated function that we thought it was going to. So our legal counsels have conferred with each other, and I think they have decided that what they need is a resolution from each of us, basically dissolving the thing and setting a date of when it'll be dissolved. And so what is before you is a resolution that was drafted by our legal counsel. I'm anticipating that the city's legal counsel will draft their own, and with the intent of the Fiber Council being dissolved effective July 1st in the fiscal year. And as we didn't commingle any funds or anything, it's a pretty clean break. So because we've each been paying our own maintenance fees to Windwave for the fiber, and so we don't have any combined assets or anything that would be a little bit more sticky in separating. So should be pretty straightforward as long as you guys don't have any objections to it.
I would recommend the county court approve. Let's see, I move to approve resolution number R 2022-07 as presented.
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve resolution number R 2022-07 as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 6.3 is consider approval of resolution number R 2022-08, adopting a public records request policy. This is a housekeeping request of you all. Back in 2019, we adopted the original policy, which was drafted by our legal counsel, just basically making sure that our public records request process is in compliance with state law. And Delaney, when she came on board, the original policy named specific staff members. So like Teresa was the staff person that received the public information request. So Delaney just went ahead and went through the policy and made it evergreen. So it didn't reference specific staff. It just said to go to our website. And then that way we can update the website if we have staff changes in various departments. So, and then other than that, I think there were a few typos. Is that right, Delaney? Is that it? She's nodding.
Yes, that was it. There was just some typos and then just those department corrections.
And we're just asking basically for a vote just to update it. But other than that, it's mostly just a housekeeping thing to get
Bring it up to date.
new contacts in place, or in this case, deleting contacts so it doesn't continually be out of date.
Right.
And then we did also update the public records request form per legal counsel. So that is included in the resolution as well.
Yeah, the last 2 pages, just for the commissioner's edification, the law is really specific as far as like the timelines for replying to people. and how much time, like, we have to reply within a certain number of days that we received it, and we have a certain number of days to tell them how long it's going to take to give them the record, and then we have a certain number of days to actually get them the record. And so legal counsel structured, as you'll see on the second page, so that we can kind of track those timelines more clearly in case there's ever somebody ever challenges that we did not meet the legal requirements in terms of the timeline. So, and Ellen in particular gets a ton, especially during election time, gets a lot of requests. So this also helps her kind of track all of the pending ones a little bit more.
So why did she get some, for what reason?
For whatever reason, right around election time, she gets a lot. So there are several right now, I think, related to the recall that's happening. So people are asking for various records related to the North Gilliam Health District. And then because she's the clerk, most of our documents are stored in her office. So she gets most of the requests anyway, year round. But for whatever reason, this time of year in particular, she seems to get a lot of public records requests. I don't know why, but
Yeah.
maybe people just get their ballot and they suddenly are paying attention and have questions. So she seems to get a lot more.
Well, I move to approve resolution number R 2022-08 as presented.
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve resolution number R 2022-08 as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, 6.4 is consider approval of resolution number R 2022-09, adopting fiscal year 2022-2023 elected officials salary schedule. So as you will recall, we adopted the salary schedules for everybody else during a previous meeting. We were waiting for the compensation board to be able to finish up its work for the year before we put this particular schedule on the agenda. They have done so, and there is a letter in your packet that I think Delaney sent around yesterday from the chairwoman of that board, which is Sue Greer. And so I will just summarize what they recommended. They are recommending setting a new condensed step schedule, which is in your packet. Basically, the thought process, I think, is that what would have been step A under the previous schedule was dropped. And so the new step A is what would be step B. And the idea is that it's a condensed schedule. So rather than having steps that are every 2 to 4 years, depending on where you are in the schedule, it would be every year. With the idea that that more closely resembles election cycles for elected officials, so that they have sort of their first 4 years are kind of the big learning curve, and then the final step would be after their first reelection, basically, except for the county judge and the justice of the peace, because we have 6-year terms. They also recommended the 8.1% cost of living increase to track with what was approved for all of the other employees, and then recommended that elected officials should receive their step changes following the new schedule and appropriate for their time served. Yeah, so I will say, because I think Sue would want me to say and noted in her letter that it was not a unanimous decision. It was a majority of the court. It was a 2-to-1 vote. But yeah, that gives you kind of the overview of what their recommendation is. The other thing, just for folks at home wondering why it is that the county court votes on their own salary schedule, we are required by law to do so. And the Ethics Commission, I have run this by them pretty much every year since I've been in office. And what they have said is that when all of the members or a majority of the members of the court have conflicts, they are statutorily required to do a duty, that we still have to do it. So despite the fact that it's our salaries and that one of the elected officials is Sherry's son and one of the elected officials is Pat's sister, we still have a legal requirement to approve the salary schedule. Which is uncomfortable, for the record, for all 3 of us.
Yes, it is.
it is what it is.
Questions about the salary schedule, the compensation board's recommendation? I was at the meeting. Nathan's the staff member, so if you have something more detailed, we might have to go get him, but I was at the meeting, so I can probably summarize most, if you guys have any questions. Oh, and the other thing I should note is that they also recommended that it go into effect July 1. Our other, as you guys recall, our other folks got theirs at April 1st.
Just the COLA though.
Just
They'll
the-
get their step in July.
Correct. For all the other employees, yes, they got their COLA immediately and then steps July 1. For elected officials, the recommendation is the COLA and the steps would be July 1.
So just a question of the other court members.
Mhm.
As this has been going through the county system, has there been any pushback or feedback from the community that you've gotten personally? And
I haven't.
concerns?
I haven't either.
I've had one. I just wondering if there's been concern. I mean, my logic on, you know, even supporting the 8.1 anywhere throughout the county is that it's the right thing to do. And not all employers can do that. So employers may struggle with the fact that it's difficult for them when the county did it. But if you don't continue to support the economy in the ways that you can, just in my personal businesses, people quit coming to restaurants or quit going to grocery stores, or they like cheaper food, or they don't spend enough money.
We don't go
And
out.
so there's a snowball effect on trying to do the right thing, which I think is trying to stay with what's going on in the nation today, which is crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, I know it's tricky, but I think especially, I mean, if you look, if aside from waste management, public jobs in the communities, not just the county, but school teachers,
It's a big economic.
they are a big economic driver. If we did not have those things here, if we didn't have school teachers, if we didn't have school districts, if we didn't have port districts, if we didn't have county and city employees, you take a lot of the middle-class jobs that are in the community, and basically they're the ones that can afford, to Pat's point, to eat lunch during, you know, the workday and take their families out to dinner and things like that. So all of the businesses, I think, depend on people having some income to be able to spend locally. So I agree.
We don't have anybody asking questions on Zoom.
No,
Okay, in that case, I move to adopt resolution number R 2022-09 as presented.
I'll second.
it's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number R 2022-09 as presented. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll vote in favor to support the majority of the compensation board.
Aye. Motion carry, or is any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. All right, let's move into announcements and next meeting. As the next meeting of the court will be May 18th. It will be at the Gronquist Building, doing our every other meeting schedule. And we just wrapped up the budget committee stuff yesterday. So I don't think we have actually any other county related budget or other meetings aside from this one. So Sherry, what do you got going on?
FEMA risk map discovery project is meeting again next Thursday, May 12th at 9 a.m. and that is in person and via video. And the same day, Norcor has a special board meeting that is posted on their website. It's going to be a short meeting. And then CAPCO meeting is the 20th and Norcor is the 19th, which is giving me some heartburn because that's also state track.
Oh, no.
So I don't know for sure how I'm going to attend those, but I will make an effort to because I will not miss my granddaughter's state track meet.
Maybe do Zoom on your phone
I
in the
could-
stands.
I'm
I'm sure they've got good Wi-Fi on
I'm sure they
U of
do
O's
it at
campus.
Hayward Field.
Yeah.
yes. And then, right now, that's all that's on my calendar. I'm sure there'll be pop-ups.
What are you doing, Pat? What's new?
The meeting with North Central Public Health next Tuesday.
Where you're gonna demand our money?
Right.
Yeah, some struggles there, but anyhow, not very efficient member of the board at this point. So,
But you're still attending it.
and
Listening,
then Korea's
yeah.
having their May meeting at the Gronquist Building in Arlington, which is kind of exciting. All
Oh,
this
yeah.
trip down there.
Great.
The Korea meeting there. We're just looking forward to that.
What is that?
That is on Friday the 13th.
Ooh, that's
10 a.m.
district track. Sorry, it's just more important to me than anything.
So,
Grandkids come first.
She's
other
gonna
than that,
graduate.
That's it.
Those are the big things. Okay, I'll start with meetings first that are coming up. Frontier Telenet budget meeting is May 11th at 3 o'clock. There'll be a Zoom link for folks who are interested in listening to that. The Frontier 911 budget process is kicking off as well. That meeting is on May 19th here in Condon at 1:30. And Central Oregon Workforce Consortium, which I represent, that's my assigned committee, is also doing its budget. We meet once a year to approve the budget, and we're doing that on May 9th at 9 a.m. So the board, the budget committee and the board are meeting simultaneously to get that approved. In terms of other projects that I just wanted to sort of flag for you guys that are coming up, one, I had a meeting with Jessica Mehta over at McKed regarding the regional transitioning from GEODC to McKed. She told me that during I believe it was in March, their full board met and gave her the go-ahead to move forward with continuing to talk about us moving in. So in my meeting with her, she asked us to go ahead and move forward with drafting the resolution. Basically, the steps is that the county has to draft a resolution, pass a resolution requesting that GEODC releases from their district and McKed accept us. And then the GEODC board needs to actually do a formal vote to release us. And then the McKed board has to do a formal vote to accept us. Both governors, because McKed is by state, both governors then have to put in letters of support, and all of that is packaged together and sent off to, I believe it's EDA is the overseeing authority to determine whether they're going to adjust the lines.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Jessica's asking
It's a big deal.
for us to do the first step, which is the resolution that needs to come from us that then goes to McKed and
No
GEODC.
resistance that you can see so far.
So I will say, I think it would behoove us, all three of us, to reach out to our counterparts in Sherman and Wasco County to make sure that we're good. Surprisingly, I was expecting the Washington state counties to have some heartburn over adding an Oregon County. They seem to, especially I think Klickitat County, see maybe a kindred spirit in that they have very similar, they have a landfill, they have a lot of wind, they have very similar demographics to
Sure
us.
do, they do.
Yeah.
So I think they were thinking that there might be some synergy between our county and theirs, and that's not where the resistance came from. The resistance came, it was in a public meeting, so I think we can talk about it here, from some of our counterparts in Wasco and Sherman County.
Really?
And I suspect it has a lot to do with public health,
I guess
honestly.
it can.
Oh,
So it may behoove us each to reach out to our friends on both of those boards, just to check in and confirm that we intend to be a good partner at McKed.
Except I know that at least two of the commissioners from Washington County thought it was a good thing we were doing with North Central.
Yeah. Yeah. but it's one of those commissioners that's on the MCED board. I'll leave it to you to figure out which one it is. But that'll tip you off, had some concerns.
Right.
So I'm planning on just reaching out to Judge Jabolskis and just checking in. You know, we're on multiple boards with them, so it's possible we got sideways elsewhere. But seems like Norcor is going smoothly and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So the only thing I can
Norcor's
think
good.
with Wasco County is it's gotta be public health that they are feeling a little upset about, so. But the majority of the board is on board with adding this. So I think we just have we need to circle back with some of our county colleagues and make sure that, that they know we intend to be a good partner.
Jed,
Go ahead.
So this, as I met with Business Oregon, they outlined that our resource for the port was through GODC.
Still does.
Okay, so I just want to mesh and sync with the county's efforts.
Sounds like this is
A
gonna,
transition to, yeah,
sounds like if this happens, it's a process that will take some time anyway,
understood.
but that is who,
And I know Susan was on the small grants committee as well for Susan from,
GODC, yeah.
so just FYI, but I appreciate your effort. Just want to see whatever we're doing.
for just some history, we just felt like we fit a little better with the George counties and the,
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
And the other thing we've run into is the regional solutions districts
Yeah.
are tied to the economic development districts. And so technically our regional solutions person is Courtney, and she's based out of Baker County, which was weird because Nate Stice, who was based out of the Dalles, was showing up for all of our meetings for Sherman County. And so we started asking, like, how come how come we can't have Nate? And it's because the two were tied together. So that was the other impetus, I think,
and
was
we were
to
in a
try
meeting
to,
with Nate the other day, so Jed met Nate, and,
yeah.
you know, I mean, he's.
And I think Ryan's based out of La Grande, isn't he, or
Pendleton, Ryan DeGraw. Pendleton.
Downton? He's great resource.
Yes.
Yeah, he is.
I don't know if that would change or no, shift here, but.
I think the Business Oregon
I don't think
one,
so.
Yeah, it's a different.
Yeah, I
county.
don't
Is
think
a
that
different
they're tied to
region.
that, yeah.
so
So they're not tied
to the regional solutions regions, I don't think. So anyway, that's a long process, as you heard. But it sounds like both GEODC and MCED, both boards are on board with this. So, and the governor's office on the Oregon side, I think will be easy to work with. We're trying to figure out how Inslee's office is a little different. We're trying to figure out how to navigate with Washington State. They don't have a Nate for the Washington side. So we're trying to figure out how we work with Inslee's office
how do
on,
you communicate?
yeah, we're not sure how to do that quite yet. So we're still working out that piece of it too. But I don't think we'll have a problem on the Oregon side getting that support. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one that I just wanted to flag for you is that I am learning about the towers that are not Frontier Telenet towers that are in Gilliam County.
Interesting.
And because I had one landowner, Barnett's, come to me last week and say, hey, you have a tower on our land. It was put in with Ernie and a handshake agreement, and we'd like to have some documentation. And so then I started asking, well, what's actually on the tower and what is it being used for? And it turns out that right now there is one user on it, which is RTG, Rural Technology Group. So I called the CEO of RTG and asked, how many people are you serving? And he said, less than 2 households, 1 to 2. And that they have basically stopped supporting the service because it's too expensive to send a technician from Bend for 2 households. So one of the things I am exploring with legal counsel, it was Paul that came in and saw me. Barnett's would prefer us not to take the tower down, because I think it's an asset. And so one of the things I'm exploring with Paul and legal counsel is, could the county convey the tower over to Barnett's so that we're no longer paying for electricity and all that kind of stuff to ensure it's not a huge amount to do any of those things, but also so we're not paying a lease for a tower that's not providing any service.
Right.
With the understanding in the conveyance documents that if it does become a public need down the road, that Barnett's will provide the county with reasonable terms to lease the tower if needed. But I just wanted to put that on your radar, that I'm still exploring if
So
we
this
can
is
do
the
that.
only kind of one so far?
There's one there.
So, Eric Harrison was telling me about a tower that was out there somewhere. That was a confusing story. I didn't know that I could track either.
So we're trying to track down the one at Lone Rock. We pay an electric bill for a wireless site, is what it says on Lone Rock Ridge. And I have asked in this building, does anybody know of, like, is it a 911 relay? Nothing. Chris Fitz was aware that there's something out there, but nothing that she knows of that our systems are actually on. Frontier Telenet, meanwhile, has also been talking about there being a tower site out there that they are not using, that is an old one that is sitting, I think, on Campbell property. So they're paying a lease for, but not actually using for 911. So the board on that side was talking about decommissioning that tower. And I'm trying to figure out if we're talking about the same site.
Have you talked to Eric?
I have not talked to Eric
He
yet.
might be a good one, because he knew what tower he was talking about. I have no idea where it's located.
Okay. Yeah, Ryan LeBlanc was trying to track it down on the Frontier Telenet side, and I was just trying to figure out, because we've been paying an electric bill out there, and nobody seems to know what the asset is. It's not on our insurance, which is weird, because usually there would be an insurance and a utility charge. The tower on Barnett's has both. This one is only utilities. And when I asked Frontier Telenet, are you paying a utility bill for the tower at Lone Rock? They said no. So I think maybe that was a Gilliam County tower that might have got conveyed over to Frontier Telenet. Only the utility bill didn't get transferred, is what I'm guessing happened. But we're trying to track that down. And those are the only two towers that are not Frontier Telenet assets that are Gilliam County owned and operated in a very loose term, because we've never done anything other than pay the insurance and the bill. But I just wanted to flag the Barnett one in particular because that one, the landowner has been more active in talking to us and wanting to either sign a lease or figure out something else with the tower.
Is it their houses that are using it?
They're not even using it. No, they switched to Starlink.
So who's
it serving?
I have no idea. I do understand, and what the CEO of RTG told me was that those two, I don't even know if it's two, it might only be one customer at this point, that when they have called to complain about service, RTG has just said, we won't charge you and we're not going to fix it. So
Interesting.
at some point, once that equipment goes down, they're going to lose their internet service one way or the other. And I don't know that Barnett's are planning on telling RTG they need to move their stuff. I mean, I think that could even be part of the discussion with them, is that they need to have a agreement with RTG in place if needed. But I mean, we can set those terms if we would like to, but I just wanted to flag that for you, that that's something I'm working on. The other thing, two more things. One, I mentioned yesterday that we had an entity reach out to us. They have this program called Rocket, and I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but basically there was a private donor that gave this entity a grant in order to take this Rocket framework and go to counties to address needs. And so in Umatilla County, they were one of the first ones that did a mental health project. My understanding is it's a 90-day exercise in which they pull together all of the community partners that may have something to contribute to the solution of whatever problem you're trying to face or
We talked about this yesterday.
exactly. And so I just wanted to put it on the record here that I am meeting with them on Thursday to sort of learn more. And I would expect to come back then and share with you all sort of what I learned about the program and get your feedback on what a potential project would be. But as I mentioned yesterday, one of the things that came to mind, because it is pressing and there's really, unlike fiber and housing, there's not really a centralized effort on trying to get at it, is childcare.
And we talked about getting those three entities together and having a discussion with the court. What do you think that would look like time-wise?
Well, I will learn more on Thursday. And in terms of if we decided that we wanted to hold those conversations through this framework, I'm thinking probably summertime. And it sounded in their initial description to me like it's a short, this isn't like a year-long process, it's like 90 days. So we would be asking for like 3 months of their time, basically. And so my hope is that we would actually have solutions coming out of that by like fall.
Yeah. Good.
Well, yeah, we kind of, if we're going to try to help Arlington childcare along, we're going to need to have some conversations fairly soon because we're asking for a review of 6 months. And
Right.
Yeah, and Miranda is gonna go, she was invited to go to their board meeting next week. And so we were planning on sending Miranda first to just kind of start getting the lay of the land, listen to some of the challenges that they're facing, just ask some basic questions so we can start to get, well, I'll have the two of you connect then. I don't know the details, but.
I believe it's the 9th at 6:30 at the childcare, but I'll touch base with Erwin today and let you know.
That's
for sure.
Tuesday.
Monday.
So we can get that piece started. And I think if we can convey to them, especially if this opportunity works out, that would sort of be the framework. And it wouldn't just be them that would be at the table. I would expect the school districts to be invited, the community college, our major employers who are struggling to, have their employees have
The preschool.
yeah, exactly. So I think it would be a multiple, because we're not just talking about the feasibility of the three of them. In Condon, there's a lack of spaces. In Arlington, it's a financial sustainability.
Condon's also got somewhat of an issue with hours of operation.
And then overall, I think they would all tell you there's a workforce issue.
Yeah.
Is they
Yes.
can't, they're having the same trouble everybody else is. They can't find qualified people, and the state is ratcheting up the requirements for not the home-based one. I don't think this would apply to Arlington, but for Condon, I mean, their employees are coming in with bachelor's degrees because that's a state requirement. So finding qualified people to even fill those jobs, I mean, it's hard enough to find somebody.
Almost impossible.
Yeah.
Right.
So addressing that larger issue might require bringing the community college in, bringing in maybe Central Oregon workforce, like some of our other partners. So
Sounds like somebody needs to look at a way of helping out on the requirement side, to get bodies in place to move from Salem or whatever, but wow.
yeah, I mean, I think it's worth exploring maybe out of this group, what restrictions the state is currently putting in place that maybe the county court could, in our advocacy efforts with our state partners, talk about the need for some rural exemptions. It's one thing to be recruiting in Portland for people with bachelor's degrees and some of these early ed. But one of the things even Janine mentioned to me is that the state requirement is so specific that you have to have a bachelor's degree in early ed. So she can't even hire like one of the school district's teachers to come in. They don't meet the state's qualifications to provide early ed because they have general education, right? They're too high, the kids are too old that they have their certifications for. So it's that specific, the state requirement for at least Condon, because of the way that they're certified by the state. I think Arlington's different because it's technically a home-based one, so there's a different set of requirements. So, but that'll be things, I think those details we should start digging into, because it's impacting accessibility here from what I can hear from our folks. So more to come on that one. I think we'll be taking, I'm excited, we can take a big role in that, I think, especially with Delaney's background, sitting on one of those boards. And frankly, we now are starting to have our workforce, as we're turning over, a lot more people with young children as part of the Gilliam County's workforce. So, so more to come on that. Final one, just to put this on your radar, is that I am still interested in exploring the structure that we're using to oversee our 911 PSAP and our Frontier Telenet system. And so Gary and I had a conversation with a company called AdCom about putting together a proposal for the court's consideration. I don't have it today, but hopefully we'll have it in the next meeting or two, of whether it is feasible to combine the two entities into one. Instead of having a separate Frontier 911 and a Frontier Telenet board, could we have one entity that oversees the whole system, PSAP all the way out? And what would that look like? Are there any technological problems with that? Licensing, reporting, any of those kinds of things? And to just, for our court's sake, have an independent assessment so that we're not asking Day Wireless, who is Frontier Telenet's main contractor, to tell us whether it's feasible.
Or Sherman and Wheeler on that kind of thing.
Yeah,
They are not going to like it.
no, they push back.
They have pushed back really hard, but it's not saying that we have to combine the two. I think the problem is too many times we sit at that board meeting and say, well, I don't think we can do it, without actually having somebody answer the question. Like if they come back to us and say, actually, no, you really can't, for whatever reason, there's regulatory reasons or whatever, then that just tells us that that's not an option. You know, it doesn't necessarily dictate we have to consolidate. It just tells us whether it's a possibility and what it would take. And then I think that allows both boards to go in eyes wide open to whether that's a possibility or not, rather than us just guessing as lay people on the board, whether it's possible. And so that's what we've asked them to give this court a proposal. And my pitch to you guys is going to be, since it's really Gary and I that are sort of banging the drum on this, to have Gilliam County fund it as sort of a goodwill gesture of like, we're not just going to sit at the table and complain anymore. We would like to actually fund this so we can bring something and tell both boards whether this is feasible or not. So I just wanted to flag that for you, that we're in those discussions and then planning on bringing a proposal back for us to discuss.
Well, I know that
More.
you and Gary have discussed it previously, and that it's been proposed to the Frontier Telenet board, and they don't seem to even want to talk about it. So, which I don't understand. If it's a savings for everybody to combine, I don't know why it's possible, why they could be against that process.
Well, I can already see this month that we are headed for a potential problem, in that I can see Frontier Telenet's budget documents and Frontier 911's budget documents. And Frontier Telenet is planning on balancing its budget with Frontier 911 funds, and Frontier 911 is not planning on providing that level of funds. So already there's a problem between the two entities that I think if they were one entity would stop existing, right? Because then we're looking at the entire budget picture as one body.
Right.
So even on that front, I can already see, even in the next 2 weeks, that there could be some potential clashes between the two boards on how much funding 911 is going to provide and what that does to the budget on Frontier Telenet.
How are the two boards structured?
So the Frontier 911 board is 4 counties who each, it's the 3 of us in Jefferson County. It's the 4 sheriffs, the 3 judges, and then Jefferson County just picks one of their
That's 911.
commissioners. That's 911, 8-member board. Frontier Telenet is the 3 county judges for the 3 of us. Jefferson County is not involved. And structurally, what has occurred, which we're trying to figure out how to fix, is when the 911 board voted to allow Jefferson County in, they took care of what they thought the increased costs of the PSAP were going to be in that initial contract. So Jefferson County provides a user fee to the 911 center because they had to hire more dispatchers. They had to do all the things because they needed more capacity to service the calls. What they didn't do was sign a contract on the Frontier Telenet side to make sure that Jefferson County covered the cost to connect them to the system. And so what's happening is as Frontier Telenet absorb, as costs go up on the Frontier Telenet side, there's no way to recoup those from Jefferson County. And so the 3 smaller counties are footing the bill.
So correct me if I don't have an understanding, because
Trying to get it. Yeah.
It's really convoluted, but basically Frontier Telenet owns a bunch of assets. And 911 owns no assets, but most of the revenue is coming in 911 and Frontier doesn't get to see that.
So sort of.
Yeah. not really.
Frontier 911 owns assets, but it owns assets within the PSAP center. So all the call center, the call taker, like when the call actually comes into the ESD building, all of that in there is paid with the 911 dollars that each of the counties are allocated from the state.
Okay.
Jefferson County also pays out of their general fund a user fee because of the extra cost that having them on board brings. The Frontier Telenet side is anything outside of the ESD building that is connecting first responders into the PSAP.
But that's a
So-
big deal in assets you're talking.
All of the towers, all of the equipment, everything. And so there's a structural problem with the way they've done this, is that the PSAP board is obviously looking for clients and new counties to bring on. Well, there's a cost on the network side, and the 2 are not communicating very well, even though there's judges on both. They're structuring it so that it's been structured in the past for Jefferson County so that the PSAP was made whole, but the network side was not. And the 3 smaller counties are the ones who are paying for the network. And so there's a structural problem because now Judge Morley and Judge DeVolskas obviously would like Jefferson County to pay on the network side, but we didn't do that when they came in, and we can't just cut them off from their 911 center by law. So we don't have a way to recoup the money from Jefferson County for what it's costing us to provide the service on the network side.
Does Jefferson County understand that at all, that they're getting maybe an advantage that they should be getting?
Yeah, but
They
do you
don't- they
do you think
don't-
that's gonna cause them to send us more money? No.
Well, I mean, it comes down to the right thing to do. I mean, I just.
Yeah, but that might also be one of the reasons to look at consolidation, because on the 911 board side, we have existing contracts with Jefferson County. So we are able on the Jefferson County, on the 911 side, to have a more equitable distribution of the cost than we are on the network side. So anyway, but all of this, to your point about how convoluted it is, this is why the system has just not changed, because none of us sitting on the board have the technical expertise to understand what needs to happen in order to make these 2 boards function more efficiently.
Collaboratively.
Exactly. And so the hope with the feasibility study is that we will get some answers from somebody who knows what they're looking at and doesn't have a dog in the fight.
Right.
So anyway, that's forthcoming. Gary and I are working on that.
But have been working
And have been.
for the last 2 years at least.
But rather than sitting at the board now and just suggesting it, I've decided that it might be helpful to actually have a document to bring and a roadmap for how it could happen. Those are all the things that I am working on at the moment. Anything else for the good of the order? If not, it is 11:15 and I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting.